There is fresh skepticism today over that Russian promise to cut back its attacks on Kyiv. The sound of air raid sirens and heavy shelling overnight in the capital is adding to those doubts this morning. This is video into us from one of Kyiv's eastern suburbs. It's from Ukraine's emergency services, showing the aftermath of a bombardment in the area yesterday, the very day Russia's defense minister declared Russian forces would, quote, fundamentally cut back military activity around Kyiv and Chernihiv. This morning, the governor of Chernihiv says there is no let-up in attacks on that city. Today as well, we're getting a new look at Irpin, the suburb on Kyiv's western side that has been retaken by Ukrainian forces. The damage to the city from weeks of heavy bombardment from Russian forces is clear, and intense street-to-street fighting to recapture it ongoing. Ukraine's general staff, in one of its latest reports, says they are seeing Russian forces pull back around Kyiv, but the report adds that appears to be a regrouping rather than an outright withdrawal. Salima Shivji is with us live from Lviv this morning, and we lead off our coverage there. That city, too, under new alerts this morning. Salima, tell us about that, because it's really dictated what is happening and where you are, actually, as we speak this morning.
That's right, Heather. No city in this country is safe from air raid sirens. They do go off fairly frequently here in Lviv, and one just ended. It actually started right before I was supposed to go live, and we did get the all clear to come out onto the balcony. So I'm just stepped out outside my room. We are now allowed to be outside. When those air raid sirens go off, obviously you have to take shelter and stay inside so as not to be in the line of danger. So this is the situation here in Lviv. It is something that people have somehow become somewhat accustomed to here. Of course, the situation around the country demonstrates that the fighting has certainly not continued. As you mentioned, heavy artillery shelling hit the outskirts of Kyiv overnight. Parts of Chernihiv also were hit by heavy bombardments. The governor says it was bombarded all night long, and officials around those areas are basically saying, you know, there has been no stop in the attacks from Russia. There was a attack also on a hospital near Chernihiv earlier yesterday, and where some 35 people were injured. Some others were killed, according to the mayor. So there is, as you mentioned, a heavy sense of skepticism about those claims from Russia that they would be planning to withdraw, substantially withdraw and drastically reduce the troops in precisely those areas that were hit overnight. You hear that, from the mayor of Chernihiv, who basically said, Russia says one thing and then does another. So we're going to wait and see what's happening on the ground in order to assess what is really going to happen moving forward. Ukrainian officials as well, defense officials, are saying that what they're seeing is perhaps Russia retreating, but they see this as an attempt to mislead people, to mislead the Ukrainian forces, and basically to pull back, redeploy, and redirect the Russian troops to certain areas where Russia wants to concentrate. So from the north into the eastern part of Ukraine. So that is the message from the Ukrainians' defense ministry, general staff of Ukrainians armed forces, really echoing the general warnings from American and British officials, and most Western leaders, basically very wary of what Russia stated yesterday, that in order to move peace talks forward, they will be withdrawing some of their troops in certain areas. Same sort of message from Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky as well. He spoke last night in his nightly address, and he did say that Ukrainians aren't naive. They will wait and see what happens. Take a listen.
Українці не наївні люди. Українці вже навчилися і за ці 34 дні вторгнення, і за минулі 8 років війни на Донбасі, що довіряти можна лише конкретному результату.
Some of the latest from the video address of President Zelensky. Salima, there is no promise of a let-up from Mariupol from Russia, and we're looking now at new satellite imagery of that city. It is obliterated in parts, Salima, just decimated. What is the latest we're hearing from Mariupol?
Yeah, Heather, we've been speaking about the situation in Mariupol for weeks now, the fact that it is becoming so dire, but honestly, the utter scale of the devastation, it's really hard to overstate. It's hard to explain. It's unfathomable. When you look at those new satellite images that have come out, hospitals, apartment buildings, entire neighborhoods completely gone, reduced to rubble, really battered by near constant bombardments from the Russians. A Russian state TV actually also got into Mariupol and did release some images that were broadcast in Russia, basically showing the devastation, heavy fighting in the streets. It's unclear what parts of Mariupol Russia controls and what parts are under Ukrainian control. So it is a very dicey situation for so many people. Again, tens of thousands of people still trapped inside Mariupol with dwindling supplies and little resources. So once again, Ukraine is trying to set up 3 humanitarian corridors to try to get people out of Mariupol and other cities in Ukraine. Mariupol is one of those cities where they're trying to set up a corridor, and they're just hoping that it remains stable enough for the people in Mariupol to get out safely, considering the devastation that city has seen. There are people still waiting to get out of there and get out to safety.